Hi, I'm the OBG. It used to be done regularly and it worked. The West identified a country as its enemy, unleashed its professional propaganda against it, and then it administered a series of sanctions, starving and murdering children, the elderly and other vulnerable groups. And if the country did not collapse within months or just a couple of years, then the bombing would begin, and the nation, totally shaken and in pain and in disarray, would collapse like a house of cards once the first NATO boots hits its grounds. And such scenarios were reenacted again and again from Yugoslavia to Iraq. But suddenly, something significant has happened. This horrific lawlessness, this chaos stopped, was deterred. The West keeps using the same tactics. It tries to terrorise independent-minded countries, to frighten people into submission, to overthrow what it defines as regimes, but its power, its monstrously destructive power, has all of a sudden become ineffective. It hits, and the attacked nation shakes, screams, sheds blood, but keeps standing, keeps proudly erect. What we are experiencing is a great moment in human history. Imperialism has not yet been defeated, but it is losing its global grip on power. Now we have to clearly understand why, so we can continue our struggle with even greater determination, with even greater effectiveness. And first of all, by now we know that the West cannot fight. It can spend trillions on defence, it can build nuclear bombs, smart missiles and strategic warplanes, but it is too cowardly and too spoiled to risk the life of its soldiers. It either kills remotely or by using regional mercenaries. And whether it becomes clear that the presence of its troops would be required, it backs up. And secondly, the West, is totally horrified of the fact that there are now two super powerful countries, China and Russia, which are unwilling to abandon their allies. Washington and London do all they can to smear Russia and to intimidate China. And Russia is being provoked continuously by propaganda, by military bases, sanctions, and by new and newer bizarre mass media inventions that depict it as the villain in all imaginable circumstances. China has been provoked practically and insanely on all fronts, from Taiwan, Hong Kong, Tibet, and the so-called Uyghur issue, to trade. And any strategy that could weaken these two countries is applied. Yet Russia and China do not crumble, they do not surrender, and they do not abandon their friends. Instead, they're building great railroads in Africa and Asia that educate people from almost all poor and desperate countries and stand by those who are being terrorized by North America and Europe. And thirdly, all the countries in the world are now clearly aware of what would happen to them if they give up and get liberated by the Western Empire. Iraq, Honduras, Indonesia, Libya, and Afghanistan are the best examples. Submitting themselves to the West, countries can only expect misery, absolute collapse, and the ruthless extraction of their resources. The poorest countries in Asia, Afghanistan, has totally collapsed under NATO occupation. The suffering and pain of the Afghan and Iraqi people is very well known to all the citizens of Iran and Venezuela. They're not giving up, because no matter how tough their life is under sanctions and the West administers terror, they're all well aware of the fact that things could get worse, much worse, if their countries were to be occupied and governed by the Washington and London injected maniacs. And everyone knows the fate of the people living in Palestine or Golan Heights, places which have been overrun by the closest ally of the West in the Middle East, and that's Israel. Of course, there are many other reasons why the West cannot get any of its adversaries to nil. One is that the toughest ones are left, and that's like Russia, Cuba, China, North Korea, Iran, Syria, and Venezuela. And they're not going to run away from the battlefield. And these are the most determined nations on earth. These are the countries that have already lost thousands, millions, or tens of millions of their people in the fight against Western imperialism and colonialism. If one is following the latest attacks on the West carefully, then the scenario is pathetic, almost grotesque. Washington and often the EU too are trying hard, and they're spending billions of dollars using the local mercenaries, or call it local opposition, and then they quickly withdraw after wretched but anticipated defeat. And so far, Venezuela has survived, Syria has survived, Iran survived, and China is fighting horrible Western-backed subversions, but it is proudly surviving. And Russia, as always, is standing tall. And this is a tremendous moment in human history, because for the first time Western imperialism is being not only defeated but fully unveiled and humiliated, and many are now laughing at it openly. But we should not celebrate yet, because we should understand what and why this is happening and then continue fighting. And there are many, many battles ahead of us, but we're on the right track. Let them try. We know how to fight. We know how to prevail. We've already fought fascism in many of its forms, and we know what freedom is. Their freedom is not our freedom. Their liberty is not our liberty. What they call democracy is not how we want our people to rule and to be ruled. So let them go away. We are our people. We do not want them. They cannot overthrow our systems because they are precisely our systems, systems that we want, that our people want, systems we are ready to fight and die for.
There's a man who contradicts. Wait, he's the type of guy to you. There's no first place, but he's part of a race. Eyes lie, but take a look inside. They mirror the sights you'll see.